Hello and welcome to my Soapbox. Today I'm talking about Joe Biden's vice presidential pick, Kamala Harris. Overall, I think she's a good choice, even if she wouldn't have been my first pick for Joe Biden's running mate. But I can see why she was picked, because at the end of the day, I don't think Joe Biden could have picked anyone else. Let me turn down the gain ever so slightly. I'm noticing I'm a tad loud there, sorry about that. But Joe Biden, here's what he was looking for in a vice president: a person to basically run in 2024. And again in 2028, continuing his and Obama's legacy. The idea being Joe Biden has the unique chance to be a three-term president, in the sense of if he resigns after one term, all of his support can go into his vice president. He can basically play to his Veep. So he had to pick someone who was popular, in the Democratic Party at the very least. He had to pick someone with presidential ambitions, someone who was young enough that they could run 2 terms, someone who was, for lack of a better term, progressive, but not... basically, Kamala Harris, at the end of the day, and I know I'll get some flack for saying this, is a social democrat. When you look at her policies, they are fundamentally socially democratic policies, though they can tend to the lighter side of things. Even her Medicare for All plan, which was Medicare for All in 10 years, which suddenly became feasible since it looks like in 10 years from now she might very well be president, are socially democratic plans. They just have all of the pangs of that technocratic liberalism we're so used to, and I think people make that mistake. Quite a bit of the basically everyone in that Democratic race for president, in the presidential nomination, was the ones who were still around by the time we hit, South Carolina and such, were fundamentally social democratic candidates, except for Klobuchar and Buttigieg, who were both liberal Democrats, and even Tom Steyer. If you look at what Tom Steyer was proposing, he was fundamentally proposing a socially democratic agenda. I don't think he was half-assing it when he said, I'm for a $20 minimum wage. That's already been taken up by progressives. And the way you have to look at the Democratic Party is it's fundamentally a breakdown of 4 groups. The Blue Dog conservatives, who are the small fringe of the right. They used to be a lot bigger, but now I think they're down to like a couple dozen members in practice. The New Democrats, which are the liberal wing of the party, what many would consider liberal Democrats, so very free market, capitalist. Well, we need a big government, but we need to, let the market decide most of this stuff type crowd. Social Democrats, which are, we still believe in capitalism, but a strong safety net. That's the Nordic country system. So a public option is actually a socially democratic policy. It's not a liberal policy. That's a thing people forget. And then you have the socialist wing, which has kind of been rebirthed by Bernie Sanders, the Democratic Socialist wing, which is Ocasio-Cortez has now really become the face of that, as Bernie has kind of stepped back a bit after his campaign. But you had basically a group of people on stage who were fundamentally social democrats, and Kamala Harris is the like. Joe Biden falls under that liberal democratic category pretty well. And you see, the thing that unites all of the Democrats, because a blue dog and a socialist basically disagree on everything economically. What they agree upon is the social issue, and that's Kamala Harris's big strength and Joe Biden's big weakness. Kamala Harris famously has introduced legislation to combat workplace harassment, racism. She's the one who might actually get a federal anti-lynching bill through this year. Her race and gender plays very well to that. It's a lot easier to believe a, black person would be against racism a lot more than Joe Biden, who has a nasty history of, I could go through the whole list, but Anita Hill, busing, segregation, speaking at Strom Thurmond's fucking funeral. I don't think Joe Biden is a bad person. I actually think his heart's in the right place on a lot of this stuff. He just thought personal liberty was the way to free African Americans. Because he never was for segregation, and that's a really big factor. He was anti-busing, and I think people make that mistake. I'm not defending that position, by the way. I'm more saying, let's actually say what Joe Biden said, not make things up because it makes us feel better. Because it's really easy to get in that good versus evil narrative. But Joe Biden picked Kamala Harris, and so already he's picked this perfect legacy candidate. You start off with the first black president, have kind of a caretaker middle president, and then the first African-American woman president. Is she half African? I don't know. The first black woman president, and Asian-American woman president, and Asian-American president. Adds up really well. She makes up for all of those social areas Joe Biden is weak in. And on the campaign trail, while she did get battered for being a prosecutor, she's done a lot of good work to kind of shy away from, to push away from that image. I think, namely, by dropping out, I think before Iowa. I can't remember if she dropped out just after Iowa or just before. I think it was just before. Yeah, she dropped out just before Iowa. Because that gave her... Because that allowed her to save herself for another campaign. She got out of the boat while it was sinking. I don't think... in total honesty, I don't think someone like Gillibrand has a chance here of ever running again after dropping out and stuff like that. Or Klobuchar or the like. Warren might have a chance in the next election, but I think not being picked for Biden as his VP was an inevitability. Now, why do I think Kamala Harris was a bad choice for Joe Biden? Well, the prosecutor thing doesn't help her, but also she was picked for that legacy. She's being groomed to be 2024. The nominee in 2024. Fine, that's party politics. Party politics will go as party politics go. But she doesn't properly account for all of Joe Biden's weaknesses. She's great at debating, but I think having her as an attorney general would have let her better debate with Bill Barr and such. Because that's a much easier thing to go on. You say, fine, I was a prosecutor who was tough on crime, but also was a really good attorney general. Well, you have Bill Barr, who just likes beating people up. It makes her tough on crime look less bad by comparison. And Joe Biden could have easily picked Tammy Duckworth, and that would have been a perfect nominee as well. But she doesn't want to be president, I'm guessing is part of it. And also, I have a strange feeling doesn't want to be VP either. No one really wants to be VP without either future presidential ambitions or because their career would be over otherwise. See Mike Pence or actually Joe Biden initially. Or because they can win a unique area. See Joe Biden as well. He was Barack Obama's token white guy to help make sure the South wouldn't totally revolt. And hell, it got him Ohio. But Kamala Harris doesn't perfectly match up with Joe Biden. I think they're a good team. I think they will do just fine. And if the election was held today, I'd say 90% chance we have a Joe Biden victory. But she's not the best choice because she doesn't follow through on a lot of stuff that Joe Biden's super weak in, like public speaking. Personability is actually the main one. I think Kamala Harris doesn't come across as the most personable individual. Not in a way like Hillary Clinton. Like, you could see yourself having a beer with Joe Biden of 8 years ago, but Joe Biden today comes across a little bit like dottering grandpa, while Kamala Harris comes across as the person who's going to yell at you for not putting all of your recycling in the different bins. So I feel like he could have used someone who was really personable, and I think Tammy Duckworth really fell in that area. Or he could have used someone who's a lot more progressive on his ticket, someone like Elizabeth Warren. I do wonder if Ocasio-Cortez was over 35 if he would have picked her. Doubt it, but it does make me wonder. Either way, he could have... But Kamala Harris is the pick that makes the most sense for what they're going for, legacy. They're looking forward to 2024, not just stopping at 2020. Which isn't a bad move. So why am I pleased with his pick of Kamala Harris? Frankly, I was really, really, really worried he was going to pick Klobuchar. Because it seemed like the perfect... They were going so neutral with Joe Biden. I was scared that he was going to have a lot of consultants going, you need to go more neutral. And she's from the good old Great Lakes, Rust Belt area. Pick her. Midwestern cred. Would have been perfect, Joe. So I'm glad to see he went with Kamala Harris. Not to mention, now we don't have to deal with the Senate tomfoolery. It's true. California, you're guaranteed to put up another Democratic senator. The fact that the Massachusetts House still hadn't acted to say you have to put up a Democrat to their Republican governor if he picked Warren and Warren won, and they won the presidency. Oh, one note about Warren. Why I think it's good he didn't pick Warren is the fact they are both gaffe machines, and Warren gets way too fixated on stuff while Joe Biden doesn't pay enough attention, it seems. And if you combine those together, you're guaranteed to have a series of horrifically bad news cycles. Which, yeah. But Joe Biden, so Kamala Harris saves the Democrats the Senate fretting. And also, I personally think I think Barack Obama got a hard time on this, and I think Kamala Harris got a hard time on this, is getting a hard time on this too. I think she is someone who genuinely believes what she says, and genuinely listens. It's like how Barack Obama said, let's abolish the filibuster, very recently. He wouldn't have said that while he was in office, but he's clearly believed it for quite a while. It's just he believed more in the sanctity of the rule of law and tradition. Now he's realized tradition bit him in the ass a bunch of times, so now he wants to get rid of the filibuster. Which is fine. I think Kamala Harris is the same way. I think if a Medicare for All... I think this is true with Joe Biden. I know he said I'd veto Medicare for All, but he said he would veto it if the numbers didn't add up, which is the most neutral way of saying if it came to my desk, I'd vote for. Of course I'd pass it, because it's not like it's going to pass through Congress without the majority of American people saying they support it. This isn't a tax cut. He wouldn't be unpopular. He would be unpopular for vetoing it, not the other way around. Kamala Harris is the same way. I genuinely think she believes in Medicare for All. I think she believes in Social Security. I think she probably believes in the idea of legalizing marijuana to an extent. That one I'm a little bit less sure of, but on social issues, I believe she's been for gay marriage the entire time. That type of thing. I think it's a case of she knows when to hold 'em and when to fold 'em. And she likes holding, and she's holding her cards. The fact she even played to Medicare for All and then immediately backtracked when it was looking bad says more to me if Medicare for All came across her desk, or even if she was asked, do you support Medicare for All, she would say yes. And that's the type of person you want in a vice president, future presidential candidate. Someone who is going to listen to you. That's actually why I quite liked Klobuchar. Never would have voted for her in my life for the primary, but she seemed like someone who was actually willing to listen. And why, at the end of the day, I said Buttigieg would have been, and still do, Buttigieg would have been the worst case scenario out of those Democrats. But that's all I have to say on this topic. If you want to hear more from this channel, click the subscribe button and the notification bell. If you like the video, click the like button and drop a comment down below. If you want to hear more rambling from me on a limit with a character note, go to my Twitter at OneManThinkTank, or at OneManThinkTan1, because I didn't realize you could change the logo, and now I'm too scared to change it. Well, I've already made 2 advertisements with it. And, oh, and lastly and importantly, have a wonderful day.